Hi there, my name is Madeline, and on today's episode of Cooped Up with the Carter, we're bringing you a special edition called In the Kitchen, where staff members like me welcome all of you into our kitchens at home and create a recipe based on a work of art in our collection. The work of art that I'm inspired by today is called Untitled Nacho Calder by contemporary artist Justin Favela. To celebrate the Carter's reopening in 2019, the museum commissioned Justin Favela to create an immersive, large-scale artwork called Puente Nuevo. While he was preparing to create this work, Favela also created a sculptural tissue paper tribute to the Carter's Alexander Calder mobile from 1942. Favela created this tasty version that was perfectly balanced like Calder's work, only this one was meant to imitate delicious cheese dripping off perfectly toasted chips. He and a team of volunteers hand-cut jalapeno pepper slices, beans, tomatoes, onions, and cilantro out of tissue paper before he assembled the entire work. So with that fantastic artwork in mind, we're gonna make some really delicious nachos today. The main difference is that these are gonna be edible. We're gonna start by chopping a bunch of vegetables because even though these are nachos, we still wanna make them a little healthy. So here's what we're gonna do first. We're gonna chop up green onions, red onions, whatever avocados you might have. Hopefully these are good, fingers crossed. A couple of limes into a bunch of slices, some garlic, half a tomato, a jalapeno pepper, and then thankfully I have frozen corn in my freezer. Next I have a giant red onion that's been sitting on my counter for a couple of weeks. I'm ready to use it, but I'm only gonna use a little bit because I've got green onions already to go. So we just want a little bit, and I'm actually gonna end up putting them in with some of the black beans that I'm gonna cook on the stove. So we just want a little bit to have that cooked onion flavor in there. I'm only gonna use this part, which isn't even a whole quarter. It's like a sixth of the onion. Now that my onions are diced pretty fine, I used just maybe a quarter of a cup of an onion. I'm gonna go ahead and cut 2 garlic cloves and throw it in the same bowl as the onions, since we're gonna then put it on the stove to start making them nice and soft before we put the black beans and half of this lime in. All right, now for the tricky part is cutting a jalapeno without making your eyes hurt later. Be safe. You want to cut the jalapeno and try really hard not to touch the insides. At least it's my trick. You can leave the seeds in if you want because that's where a lot of the heat is, but I prefer just having a few and keeping the seeds in for a little bit, but not all of them. You can do whatever you want. I mean, these are your nachos, so go crazy. And you want them a good size, but diced. At least that's how I like them. Some people like them sliced. Again, just go with what your heart tells you. So with that, we're gonna get started on cooking the onions and garlic in a little bit of olive oil in a little pan like this. And once they're soft for about 5 minutes, I'll throw in the drained black beans, which will put a lot of salt and pepper and then squeeze in a ton of lime juice. And we'll just let those simmer away until we're ready to start compiling the rest of our ingredients onto the chips. All right, our onions and garlic are cooking on the stove top in a little olive oil. We're gonna add some salt. We're gonna let this cook a little bit longer before we add in the black beans that I've already drained. And I rinsed them off too because there's a lot of weird stuff that comes in the cans of black beans. And I don't really know what it is, but I don't want it in here. All right, the onions look like they've softened up enough. I'm gonna go ahead and add the beans. And at this point, you're gonna wanna go ahead and add half of a lime. At this point, I usually add a splash of water and put a lid on it and then let it just simmer on low and for the next, I don't know, 10 minutes. And They'll just deepen a little bit in color and they'll get more flavorful as the onion and garlic continues to cook with the lime juice and the salt in here. So we're gonna let them sit for a bit and be back in a second. All right, I have some frozen corn that I've just thawed in the microwave for like a minute so that it's not cold anymore. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of salt, some cayenne pepper, make it a little surprise kick because you wouldn't normally expect corn to be spicy, and some fresh black pepper. And stir that up, and we'll just, when it's time to assemble, scatter that all over the chips. And in the oven, they tend to get really crispy if you have them on top, and really soft and creamy when they're underneath the layers. So it's really good. And the last thing that I'm gonna prep before we start assembling is some really delicious limey cream, sour cream. However, they didn't have sour cream when I went to the store last week. Plus Greek yogurt is basically the same thing, and it's slightly tastier and keeps longer than sour cream does. So I like to use that anyway. So I'm gonna use some sour cream. I'm gonna use kind of a lot because it's my favorite part, and because we didn't have avocados to use. We're gonna use this as our creamy, delicious part. And then I found my lemon juicer, and we're gonna squeeze out the lime juice and this super not juicy lime. Add a bunch of salt and pepper. There we go. We can drizzle that on top of our nachos when they come out of the oven, which, by the way, our oven should be preheating, but I haven't done that yet. You're gonna wanna do 425. All right, so I think we're ready for assembling. I personally like tortilla chips like Tostitos scoops because they're really good for really heavy topping nachos, and that they hold a lot more in the little cups. So I'm gonna spread out a lot of tortilla chips onto this cookie sheet, and we're gonna start topping. You can obviously use whatever type of tortilla chips you like. These are just always available at my store, and they're, like I said, really easy for holding lots of cheese and toppings, and they don't get too soggy either when they're in the oven melting away. There's another important factor, which you probably wouldn't think about when building nachos, is that you don't want things to get too soggy. I'm just trying to turn as many of these up as I can so that they can reach their full potential. All right, so I'm gonna layer on some cheese first. I have a bunch of different types of cheese in my fridge that I need to use up, so I'm taking this opportunity to do that. I also had a big block of cheddar cheese that I bought in case we ran out of cheese, which we did. So I grated it, and then I'm gonna save a little bit of that one. I also bought a giant bag of mozzarella, which I love in nachos. I'm sure plenty of people would disagree, but I think it makes that epic cheese pool that Justin Favela's work references. Although his cheese was yellow. So we have a good base layer on. I'm gonna then start with the beans, which are nice and darker in color. And they've marinated really nicely with the onions and garlic and the lime juice, and they smell amazing. So I'm just gonna start sprinkling these on. And these are veggie nachos, so this is where majority of my protein, what our family's gonna be getting protein from tonight, plus the cheese. And You can obviously add ground beef or chicken. If you have leftover chicken from another night, that would be delicious. You can put whatever you want on nachos. I think we all agree that's the best part about nachos. All right, and then I have the corn that I put the cayenne pepper in. I put cayenne pepper, salt and pepper with these, and I've been snacking on them while everything else is finishing cooking, and they're really spicy, so they're gonna add a lot of good heat to these nachos. All right, we have jalapenos next that I chopped. I'm gonna put these on, and there's quite a lot because this was a giant jalapeno that what they had at the store, which I was super jazzed about because I love jalapenos. All right. All right, I have some tomato that I salted a little bit, and a lot of liquids come out of it. So I'm just gonna sparingly put these on, and I'm only gonna put a few pieces on about half of this tray because not everyone in my family likes tomatoes, though their opinions might be wrong. Okay, and then last I'm gonna add a little bit more cheese on top. So we've got a base layer of cheese, and then we're gonna wanna make sure we have enough cheese on top that gets all melty and holds the whole thing together. I think I've put about maybe 3 cups of cheese on here. It's quite a lot, but if you're gonna go through all of this trouble of making nachos, why would you only put a little bit of cheese on here? What's the point? So the last thing is those green onions that we cut. We'll put right on top so that they get really crispy in the oven. All right, these are ready to go in at 425 for 10-15 minutes or so. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer, a little bit less. This is not a time to walk away and play on your phones. You're gonna wanna keep an eye on these babies because you don't wanna burn them. That would be a disaster. All right, they just came out of the oven and everything is all melted and hot, and some of the green onions got really crispy on top. So they're perfect and ready to go. I've got some salsa, my sour cream, fake out, which is just actually Greek yogurt because it's what we had at the store, and some fresh cilantro, plus some more limes if we feel like we need some extra lime juice. I hope you guys enjoy this Justin Favela Nacho Calder inspired dinner and have a good time eating it. Take care. Bye.